But how is everyone feeling? What have we got to worry
Well,
about
actually,
the year ahead?
that's it. Thanks, CJ. That's obviously the old Peach tracker data. And yeah, look, we all know confidence is taking a massive hit. And that's from 100 now, I think. And the guys from CJ will correct me if I'm wrong, over 100 companies. But that's groups. So if you look at the independent sector, that's an awful lot worse. So basically, we've seen this drop in confidence amongst leaders. That was taken in October. My sense is probably, will it have got any better? Probably not. Not much good news coming through. And I think, let's face it, the industry is feeling angry. It's feeling disappointed. It's feeling frustrated, even betrayed by, depending on where you sit, by the budget, and particularly that twin hit on NIC. So that's what we're living with. And I think the realization is that it's probably not going to change. So we are living in, and got to get used to it, we are living in a high cost sector. That's where we are. Because look, energy costs have stabilized. We know that food inflation has come down, but prices haven't. So basically, we're coping with that. And actually, even back in November when we presented this, a lot of the big companies had already done their mitigation sessions. They knew how they were going to face the future. And I think, we're still seeing there's still 40% of senior execs who are at least somewhat confident about the future. And I think what we're getting in confidence is seeing this increase in what we've been talking about for some years now, the asymmetric market. There is not one view of hospitality. There are some people who are suffering more than others, and a lot of people will lose their businesses, and it's going to be really sad. But there are other companies who are better placed with more financial headroom who will come through this. So that 40% is still people who are confident. They know it's going to be tough, but they've found looking a way through it. But I think also that confidence thing shows that, that resilience, resourcefulness in the sector as well to come through it. And I think we've got to remember about this sector is it is not going away. This is not an industry which is in decline because of massive technological changes. The fundamentals of hospitality are still there. I mean, dare I say, I started in journalism back, 50 years ago, believe it or not, and I can still go into a pub in Leicester where I started and have a cheese and onion cob and a pint of Tiger. So, those things are still there. So but it's the wraparound and how things are changed and how we promote and do all that sort of thing. We'll come on to that. That's a changing. So I think that confidence will come through. But I also think that I'd turn it round the other way. I have probably more confidence in the market overall than perhaps the industry does. It will come through in one shape or other. There will be casualties. It will be hard. It will be tough. But people will get through it. And I think the key thing is to learn how people are actually getting through it.
Yep. And like-for-like sales remain positive.
Yeah, and again, that's from groups as well. So it's not, and we know it's tougher in general independents. And again, the independent sector covers a broad range of different businesses. But within that, we are seeing that 2 to 3%. The worst areas, I mean, bars and nightclubs had a really bad year last year. And if you strip those out, you'd be looking at 2 or 3%. Now, that may not cover increased costs. So that's not the point. But what it does show is there is demand from the consumer. Now, okay, a lot of that is on price because people have put their prices up, but people are still going out, probably not as much, but spending more when they do go out, but they are still spending. And I think we look at what we've seen over Christmas, and I've seen some of the weekly figures out of CJ, but not the total December numbers yet. But, we've seen all reports these last weeks about people who are doing well. It's always the people who do well who tell Propel and MCA about how well they're doing. But some really, really big figures. And I was also with one of the big drinks companies yesterday, and they'd had a good Christmas. And more importantly, they were telling me that the wholesalers are now restocking because the wholesalers basically sold out of product over Christmas. So we had a good Christmas. And last year was hit by train strikes, but even that was much better than the year before. So we've got to hold that. The issue is, and we'll come on to this, is understanding the consumers, where they're spending, when they're spending, whatever. So I think, looking forward, I think we'll probably see something, similar sort of numbers going forward.
Okay. So this is showing site numbers remaining stable year on year at top line.
Well, they were when this came out, anyway.
This is Ruben shared.
Yeah. It's going forward. Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But
how do you think the landscape's
Yeah, because obviously this is licensed premises, and it's the first time ever it's sort of dipped below 100,000 licensed premises in the country, mainly pubs, but not just pubs anyway. It sells alcohol, and in one sense, it has been a long-term trend, even from the Second World War. All the time, pubs have been closing. It's happened. We occasionally plateau and goes down again. So I think it is good it's stabilised. I think we'll probably get a bit of a dip because of the hit of costs coming through, and then most of those casualties have been independents again. And it's not a matter of saying independents are bad, chains are good, but people haven't got the resources in there. Okay, some people just aren't good enough, but it's sad for those. But I think we will see more casualties. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that dips again this year, then plateaus out once we get a bit of stability going forward. And again, but we have seen some changes in that around the late night bar market, and that's been driven by a real shift in consumer activity. People aren't going out later. It's not just old people like me going to bed early. People tend to be going to bed early these days. So there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Where do you think the numbers are? I mean, you sort of alluded to it, but where do you think the numbers? Which different sectors do you think will be most affected this year?
Well, I think it's looking at as I said, it's cutting at independence versus chains really, because but also I think in those numbers we've seen this last year, and I think Ruben will back me up on this. We've probably seen more churn than we've probably ever seen before, and I think because these are net figures, remember, this isn't just independent. So it depends. People report different things about closures. So we're already seeing lots of openings. I think rollouts will slow because I think the effect of those extra costs that people will be a bit more circumspect about where they open, because you've got to get it right. So perhaps that will slow a bit. That's why I think it will come down. But actually, there has been a churn. So we've seen people really struggling and probably going out of business or selling. And I think there's also a matter of right sizing as well. That you see a company like Wetherspoons who are successful, going well, but they regularly churn their sites. In fact, they've never really got. Everyone said, oh, one day they'll hit 1,000. They'll never hit 1,000. 800 is about where they think, but they will change those markets. So I think that landscape will change.
And then these were the key focus areas that you mentioned at Peach. Ruben's going to focus in more detail on the changing consumer in a little while. Can you talk us through just a couple of key things, I guess, for each of those other ones, or you're going to talk?
Well, let's put it together. I think if you can encapsulate all that, I think it doesn't change. I think those still stand up. Two words for this year: product and productivity. And I think that sort of sums that up. Product, and by product, what do I mean? It's the experience. It's the consumer experience. It's the food. It's the drink. It's the service. I think the industry really needs to concentrate on that. Because at the moment we are seeing, consumers still coming out, and actually, inflation figures were pretty good, bit of growth in the market. So, perhaps we shouldn't always project, as it were, our frustrations on the consumers, because they have a different experience. But it is product, and I think the danger is of cutting product. We're going to cut staff, put prices up too much. But if you cut that experience, that's a competitive area. And I think actually as an industry, and I'm much to blame, we don't talk about that enough. We talk about all the closures and whatever, but we probably talk about, okay, what are the trends? What are people eating? What are people drinking? What is the experience? And we see it out there, but I think there's that concentration on that. The other thing is productivity, and that's where it comes back to your people doing more with less, but also keeping the culture. So productivity is not, it is a bit of time and motion, but it is also looking after your staff, making sure they get the rotas they want, making sure you don't lose your best people, because it is competitive out there. So I think we productivity is something we haven't talked about a lot, and I think that's going to be fundamental. So if you put all that together, I won't go into consumer trends, but we've got to stay close to our consumer, really understand what they want, use data, use technology, and yes, AI. And again, that's really hitting. We've just done a bit of research as well, which is out on tomorrow, because I'm doing a webinar with Soda on AI tomorrow with Brian Trollope and a few others. And again, interesting to see what Tommy's going to say today. But I think that's going to be a big issue because it's a matter of doing things quicker, better, more efficiently, whether that's scheduling, whether that's tracking your consumers, whether that's understanding the ergonomics of a site. You know, you look at what Dishoom are doing with CCTV anonymized, but seeing how the pass works. Exactly, and I think the interesting about that is it goes back to your people. I think what people are finding is that there's not that resistance from frontline staff. There's an enthusiasm because they're young, they get it. Sometimes I think, you know, we don't always talk to our staff about, you know, what they want because they are the younger generation. They're the main customers for what we do, and I think. And again, what I know what Dishoom have done, you know, they've almost given that over to the GMs, trusted them. If we're going to do AI, how do we do it? So you keep people in. They get it. So all those things work together: technology, culture, whatever. And it's not replacing people; it's wrapping around people and making sure they do their job better, they're happier, and you get GMs out of the office and onto the floor.
Okay, thank you. If you could pick one trend, you've talked about the market as a whole, which you think will really define impacts our industry in 2025?
That's an interesting. I mean, I think probably AI will be that change but all that will do actually. That's what you've got to do. It's not necessarily more expensive, but I think it will. And the reality is, it will again increase that polarization in the market. The people who embrace change. And again, it's probably embracing change, but I think around that tech AI thing is cool. But I'll leave you with something else actually. And again, it's smaller things you can do. And one of the things I've been taken by recently is it's events. It's about occasions, people creating that. It's about having predictable revenue, which we tend not to, because it's all about walk-ins and whatever, because that's what we do. You know, it's interesting talking to Drake and Morgan. You know, they've got 20 salespeople. You know, they're doing weddings. It's thinking differently, thinking of new things to do, and having events like this, and ours, of course, where people actually share those things. So I think, you know, working together, this industry, it's going to be tough. You know, we've got to accept those cost things, but that creativity, I think, is the key thing that will come through.
Fabulous. I agree. This industry.
I'm optimistic, if you haven't noticed.
So, thank goodness, and we appreciate that. Thank you. We've probably got time for a question, maybe if anyone has. I might throw people on the spot here.
I just wanted to ask, because you talked about licensed premises.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those hard ones, isn't it? We're so used to licensed premises.
Yeah.
But is that now 2/3 of the market, half the market? You know, whereabouts is it? How much are we excluding?
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think I'd probably let Ruben answer that in terms of pure numbers. But again, you're right, actually. The other bit of that is, you know, and you've got Al Murdoch here talking about QSR. I think that's actually been the growth, and there's an awful lot of competition coming now. And two things: one, there's over 2,000 drive-throughs in this country now, and one of the changes is, we talked about late night. One of the changes is sort of the value for money pub industry sector has probably got hit more by QSR than anybody else. You know, Wetherspoons does what it does extremely well. But there aren't many other people doing that now, because actually you can get really good food, a good experience at QSR. And Al's going to be talking about delivery, which is the other thing which is skewing things. Because, you know, the thing about hospitality is, in one sense, it's not rocket science, but there's a hell of a lot of levers you can pull. And I think it's understanding what those levers are, and understanding who is pulling them as well. So yeah, you know, I think competition comes in all shapes and sizes. So you're right, just concentrating on licensed premises is not the be all and end all.
Fabulous. Peter, I appreciate that. Thank
Always
you
fun.
For a swift insight. Optimistic for the year ahead.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. But look, it's often been tough.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Pleasure.